The Celtics Talk podcast is presented by 24autogroup.com, 11 locations across New England.
What's up, everybody? Off-day edition of the Celtics Talk podcast, coming to you with the Celtics on a rare two-day break. This is the second to last time this season, only a month left in the regular season, that the Celtics will have 2 days off. So practice today, they'll travel to Washington in advance of Sunday's game. They have a break while in Atlanta later this month. They'll have 2 days off in between a home and home with the Hawks, which is kind of like an interesting little schedule caveat. But we wanted to use this rare downshift to sort of put the spotlight on a bigger picture topic. And I think it's clear, maybe the biggest storyline of the last at least 10 games has been Jaylen Brown's play, which has just gone to a whole nother level coming out of the All-Star break. And so here's the plan. I'm going to take you through some numbers to just accentuate how good he's been over these 10 games. We're going to get into a little bit about his candidacy for awards, whether that's All-NBA. That's kicked into overdrive again after winning All-NBA second team last year. And we'll talk about all defense because Jaylen has made that a point. You'll hear from Jaylen, and we'll have a little discussion at the end about just how much progress he's made versus, expectation. I think one of the most impressive things is that Jaylen signs that contract last summer. Now, it won't kick in until this coming year. And yet, once you've secured it, you have that security of the big contract. It would be very easy to downshift. Jaylen never does that. Every year he comes back unsatisfied by the year before and eager to expand his game, develop, just find new ways to improve. And especially in these last 10 games, he has really done that. So let's get into it with the numbers. You guys know I like to nerd out with net rating and all that. I'm gonna spare you of that. Let's just start at the very basic level. The last 10 games, 28.9 points. That's up 6.9 points from his pre-All-Star scoring average. He's shooting 54% over those 10 games. That's up 4.8% from the first half. 40.6 beyond the three-point arc. That's huge. That's up 6.4% since pre-All-Star. And let's face it, we say this all the time with Jason Tatum too. Like when the Jays are making threes, it just takes their scoring to another level. It takes their impact to another level because it's just so much more dangerous. We know how much the Celtics love threes, but usually it's like Derek White and Drew Holiday that are carrying that, and obviously Porzingis and what Sam Hauser does coming off the bench. But Jaylen's been really good with the three-point shot out of the break. Also, 6 rebounds, up about a half a rebound per game. 3.6 assists it's sort of static there. Like he's down just barely from the first half of the season, but only 1.3 turnovers. And this is the number I love. His assist to turnover ratio over these 10 games, 2.77. It was down at 1.51. He is plus 148 over that span. Jaylen has just put so much efficiency into his game, whether it's those nights where it feels like he's 10 for 13 shooting, where he just can't miss from the mid-range. I was looking up some of the data. Like I'm trying to figure out what is he doing better in this stretch? And some of it is just he's bullying his way to the basket and getting whatever he wants. He's also made a ton of tough shots along the way, some circuits. I think about that 360 spinning layup he had at one point. He's making some tough turnarounds. There is a value to having tough shot makers, especially once you get into the playoffs. You crunch the advanced numbers, 132.6 offensive rating during his time on the court. That's up from 118.7. So a plus 13.9 jump in offensive efficiency for Jaylen Brown in the second half, post All-Star portion of the year. 110.5 defensive rating. That's down from a 111.3, down about a point. And a net rating of plus 22.1. That is the best on the team. Now, I think Luke Cornett was second, plus 20-ish, if I'm remembering my numbers right. A lot of guys have some glossy numbers. The Celtics have obviously, outside of the 2 losses to Cleveland and to Denver, have really been dominating teams, and especially that first unit group and some of the sub lineups have helped kind of push those numbers higher. But especially for Jaylen, who hasn't always been a net rating darling, whose metrics sometimes lag behind that of Tatum and others on the team, especially like when you consider how good Derek White is in those categories. It's really neat to see how good he's been. I'm eager. One of the things I didn't calculate, and now I'm eager to go back and look at is just maybe the numbers with Jaylen on the court and no Jason Tatum. We saw in that Phoenix game, Celtics did a great job of the sort of balancing it, where I believe Jason was on the court with Drew, and Jaylen was with Derek. Well, one was, well, maybe I'm mixing up the pairings, but either way, it felt like when the Jays were split up in the middle quarters, it was a chance for them to sort of control the play in that time. And it was, ironically, I think it was Jason who had the big first quarter, and then Jaylen came back. Usually a first quarter monster, dominates that second quarter. Celtics really blow the game open with both of them on the court to start the third, and off they go. So I just feel like, watching the tape, he's just so aggressive. He feels like there's a renewed confidence. I looked up drive numbers thinking maybe that was that might be a little bit different. And it's actually his drives per game are down. Now it's, the NBA metrics can be a little bit fluky in tracking in terms of like what is a drive, and is he posting up more? Is he still operating more around the basket? Here's what I thought was interesting: 10.1 drives per game. That's tops on the Celtics for the season. For the season, he's shooting 56.5% field goal percentage on drives, and it equates to about 6.7 points per game off drives. Post All-Star, he's shooting 68.1% on drives, 8.3 points per game. So even though the total number of drives is down, like one drive per game, he's so much more efficient when he's doing it, kicking that scoring average up almost 2 points per game. The other part that is really obvious here, he's number 3 in the league in transition points, behind only Giannis and SGA. And I think I said this on Celtics Post Up when we did some Jaylen numbers a couple weeks ago. I think that's my favorite part about him, is like the Celtics want to play fast, and so often they'll get the rebound. And even when they're dominating, they'll have these stretches where they maybe just don't get into actions quick enough, where they walk the ball up the court, where, it's great that your defense can get stops like that, but you got to move. I'm thinking ahead to the playoffs. And if you run into Denver, you got to make them work. You got to get Jokic up and down the court. I love that Jaylen is the one who is consistently pushing the pace, trying to make good things happen in transition, and to be number 3 in the league, like 400 and something points in transition, is really, really impressive. Also, the other number that jumped out to me was that he's shooting 49% on all mid-range shots. It was in the 93rd percentile for wings per cleaning the glass data. That number was up something like 7% from last year. He's really done well in the short mid-range, 4 to 14 feet. So even if he's not getting to the rim, he's just making those little floaters, or, early portion of the paint, the shots that are sometimes tough when you don't get all the way to the basket. He's just been really good. And the eye test and the numbers test, they all tell you the same thing, that Jaylen has just been super impactful. That when he's playing like this, I don't know exactly how you beat the Celtics, because if the Jays both have it going, we were joking last night in the studio because first half felt like we were steamrolling towards the first 30-30 game in a while. Celtics, when they played Dallas earlier this season, got one of those. Celtics something like 26-2 in those matchups, one of which was an overtime game, a rare 40-40 game that took down the Jays. And so if you can get this sort of output from him when he is averaging the 28.9 points per game, yeah, I don't know if Tatum has it going as well. It's good luck trying to figure out how to beat this team, because there's so many other good players on here too. Now, you could factor in that there's been no Kristaps Porzingis out there, and so they've needed a little bit extra boost. And while the Celtics are fully capable of spreading that out, it is pretty neat that Jaylen has been able to shoulder that and really just be the offensive force for much of this stretch. And every game, it just feels like there's no slowing down. And what a better time, as you sort of hit the home stretch of the season, for him to be feeling confident in his offensive abilities. This could be really big moving forward into the postseason. After that win against Phoenix, Jaylen went to the podium, talked a lot about, I thought it was great. The first question you'll hear is something like, is this your best stretch of basketball? And I think he says, like, do you mean this month or this season? It's pretty clear. This is his best season overall, but more importantly, this might be the best stretch of this season. We'll talk a little bit about that. I thought he had a better stretch defensively start of the year, so the numbers were a little bit better, but he's actually been taking on more challenges lately. So enough about me rambling about it. Here's Jaylen talking about how successful he's been this season.
Jaylen, do you feel like this is the best you've played overall in your career, just combining everything, most comfort that you've had on both ends?
Talking about like right now or what?
Yeah, like right now, say over the last month.
Yeah, I think this whole season. I just feel like I improved on a lot of the stuff that I needed to work on. I just overall just improved my mentality, but just attack my weaknesses. And I feel like some of the stuff that, you could say about me last year, you can't say about me this year. So I'm excited to go into the playoffs and keep it going and prove the same thing.
Is there anything specifically that drove you to improve, drove you to change the mindset?
Yeah, loss. I mean, when you lose, when you come up short, and on your home floor, when things don't go your way. It's a quote that I like, when things don't go your way, when you don't get what you want, what you got was experience. And I love that quote. And I think that, we've had losses, we've had embarrassment, we've had mistakes. And, I've used it all to just improve.
Jaylen, it feels like you and Jason have taken, obviously it's gradually over time, but this season with all the talent you guys added, it's you've gone from just the progression of you guys as playmakers and the ability to read defenses, like the Suns just allowing you to go one-on-one tonight, them doubling Jason at top three-point line. What's that progression like of you guys reading the game and like behind the scenes, especially this season?
That's it right there. Being able to recognize, how teams are guarding us, where the coverage is at, and then playing from there. And I think that night to night, being able to have a focus, being able to have the attention to detail, to shift and be humble enough to allow whatever needs to happen. And I think that's where the growth has been, and I think that's where it got to continue as, teams try to guard us different ways, just, expose whatever it is that they're giving up and live with those results.
Jaylen, we talked about, I think in Portland, reading the passing lanes like a DB. You did it a couple times again tonight. What's gone into that? And Joe said he thought your defense early led to your offense, like just the enthusiasm you showed. Can you touch on that?
I feel like I've been, doing it all year, and I'm going to keep doing it. Just defensively, before the season, I made a commitment that I wanted to be first team, all defense, and I feel like, being a playmaker on defense, also being solid, making guys have tough nights, being uncomfortable, chasing guys around, whatever it takes, just being able to show your defensive versatility. Like we praise offense and we highlight offense and emphasize offense, and, basketball is two sides of the sport, and to have a variety, to have an arsenal on the defensive end of the side of the basketball doesn't get enough praise, because it's a skill set. Being able to guard guys, being able to chase guys, being able to anticipate passing lanes, switch on the bigs, chase guys off screens, shooters, whatever it is. I pride myself in being able to be versatile, because everybody can't do that. Everybody can't chase a guy off a screen, then battle a big, then pressure a guy full court. But just having a different arsenal on defense, I've been able to learn from some of the best, taking stuff from Marcus, taking stuff from D-Way, taking stuff from Drew. You know what I mean? Studying some of the guys that we had, time and anticipation. And this year, I've just been able to. I feel like I've been having a really good year on that side of the ball. So that's what goes into it.
All right. What I want to wrap up with one last batch of numbers. I think it's interesting that he's continued. So I got the chance to sit down with Jaylen before the season, and he said at that point he wanted all 5 guys in the starting lineup to be getting all defense votes, and thought there was a legitimate chance that he could be in that conversation as well. And like, that's ambitious, because Jaylen has been, especially in the playoffs last year, you think about that when he was matching up with James Harden and taking on that challenge, he was really good for stretches, but he has also had times in his career where he hasn't been the most focused defender, where if you put him on like a guy in the corner, he sometimes gets caught ball watching and get back cut, could just like lose track of a guy. Celtics have done a great job. Joe Mazzulla, I feel like, has really tapped into like the best, how to get the most out of Jaylen in terms of finding those matchups where put him on somebody, even if he's taken on bigger players. He talked after that Denver loss about, he seemed legitimately angry. Like, maybe I should have taken some turns on Jokic. I love that confidence. I don't know if Jaylen's capable of holding up in that matchup, but, I'm not ruling out that he can't. And he has shown consistently that you can put him on elite scorers, on shifty guards, and he can use his size, his athleticism, and at least be competitive with some of the best offensive players in the league. You think about him taking on Jamal Murray, you think about Luka. It's clear Jaylen wants to be known as a player who isn't just an offensive force. And I think this season, more than any other, he has shown that he is capable. So what do the numbers tell us? There is 124 players in the NBA, so about a quarter of the league, that defend at least 10 field goals a game who have played at least 50 games. So I'm going 50 because I took Celtics have played 66 games. I wanted like 80%, 75% region of the games played, plus guys that are probably going to qualify. Like if you're going to qualify for all defense, you're going to need the 65 game thing. So I capped it at 50 for right now. Jaylen is 9th in the NBA with a defensive field goal percentage of 44.5%. That is 2.9% below expected. He's in the top 16 among those 124 qualifiers. For much of the season, like for the first, like if you go back, we had a Celtics post up probably a month into the season, 2 months into the season. Jaylen was number 1 on that defensive field goal list and was holding players down at like 41% towards the start of the year. Just like an outrageous number. Anytime you're, I think some of those Celtics defensive teams a couple of years ago had maybe Rob was holding guys near 30%, but it's harder for centers because there's just a higher expected output at that. But Jaylen really was dominating in that category. So rode it a little bit. And I said, is that his defense slipping back a little? I think it's more that he's just taking on the challenge. And so not only are you, maybe you're not quite as successful going up against a Luka or Jamal Murray. So it, you inflates your number, but the expected there is also goes up. And so to be holding guys almost 3% below, I mean, that's the same number as like, I think Kristaps Porzingis is in that neighborhood. I think it's actually ahead of Drew Holiday and Derek White. Both of them were like 2.7, 2.5 last time I looked. Same deal though. Those guys are taking on some pretty fierce challenges. And so I do think Jaylen's going to get some votes here. It might take a little campaigning towards the finish line. It's going to probably take some numbers to accentuate how good he's been. But I do think there's a case to be made that if you can pull out all the highlights of him defending Luka and taking on those challenges, it sort of hammers home how good he's been. I think I have to go through some of the bigger games this season and try to hone it in. Like I know Cleaning the Glass does, how players offensively perform against top 10 teams. I'm wondering if I can parse the numbers a little bit on defense and see exactly how good Jaylen's been in the biggest matchups. It might just come down to looking at some of those head-to-head battles and just seeing, how willing he's been to take on that challenge. A lot of possessions against elite players and like against other all-star, all-NBA type players. And so I think there was a point early in the season when you might have been able to convince me that based on how good Kristaps Porzingis had been, that maybe Tatum and Porzingis were trending towards those all-NBA spots. But part of that was just like how jarring it was to watch Porzingis integrate into this offense and fit so seamlessly and be the guy that they could sort of lean on in big spots. It's clear how much better they are when he's out there, when that whole group is out there, and they can rely on him to break runs and just operate in that post. Even the chemistry that Cookies and Cream got together has aided each other. And it's kind of remarkable that Jaylen has been able to put up these numbers even while Porzingis has missed at least the last 4 games and others is part of this season. So I think Jaylen is in that conversation for a second all NBA second team like he did last year. Even if he just gets the third team, I think there was a portion of this year where you could sit there and there was questions about whether he could get back on that level. So credit to Jaylen. Again, the strides he's made, the progress that he's made, he has put himself in that position. Our friends over at Fanatics Sportsbook, I asked them to give me a line for Sunday's game against the Wizards. And I was interested to know what it is for Jaylen, like over under, considering that he's almost up at 29 points per game in this stretch. What did they think for a line? Has it moved? A lot of times Jaylen will come in at 21, 22. And I was actually surprised. Their initial over under, and this could change based on injury report and all that, but on Friday afternoon, it was at 21.5 points. I think we all know the Wizards do not play a lot of defense, and it feels like a pretty good opportunity for the Celtics to pile up some points. All that said, it is an interesting conundrum because, will the starters be playing in the fourth quarter? The Celtics have to look at the schedule and say, there's a back-to-back here. You're coming back home to play Detroit, a team that gave you trouble in the first meeting and one of the meetings. So I wonder if the Celtics will do their best to keep guys fresh. That's a tough back-to-back, having to play on the road and then come home. The other thing at play here is that The Wizards are on the second night of a back-to-back in this game, so they shouldn't. They struggle as it is, and now you're adding some travel and some difficulty to that. I wonder if that further emboldens the Celtics to build a big lead and then maybe turn it over to some of their reserves. But I don't suspect you'll see that number down that low very often this season or the remainder of this season, and especially into the playoffs. Jaylen's minutes are going to go up once we get to the playoff stage, and some of those over-unders for his points total will as well. If I don't have it at my house, it's stuck in the studio, but if I had, even with the caveat of that we're not sure how long the Celtics starters will be out there, I'll be pounding my over button on 21.5, because that just feels like a number that Jaylen can get to. All right. We will be back with you Sunday night after that game for the next post-game pod. Like I said, 5 games in 7 nights. Post-game pod will be quite busy. I will get my coffee ready for another crazy week of games. Go like, go subscribe, go check us out on the YouTube page. If you want, leave some comments down there on the YouTube page about where you think Jaylen will end up finishing. Will he land? Will he get true all defensive consideration? Will he get that second team All NBA? How you feeling about his season in general? We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk Podcast.